Hello, everybody. Welcome. I have not streamed in a while. How are you guys doing? Today, I want to talk about Joker 2, the newest movie in the DC franchise that, usually when a movie comes out and there's a lot of discussion about it, it's often very divisive, but this movie, not so much. Like, most people seem to dislike it. And usually you may get a discrepancy between like the movie buffs like me who may like look at character arcs and all that boring stuff and say, "Oh, the movie's actually really good with that." And then the casual audiences say, "No, it's too complex, they hate it." But with this, I do not know a single person that likes it. Of course I've seen some random Twitter posts from people who say they like the film, and all the power to you, but very peculiar. I don't know of a single person that likes this movie. What's so interesting about this movie to me, and I'll dive into a lot of different subjects about this movie that we can have a back and forth about if anyone's in the chat. Um, but what's so peculiar about this film is if I feel like it was a competently made movie that intentionally wanted to undermine the first film, because this is a sequel. I mean, the entirety of this movie, you need to have watched the entirety of this movie references the previous film. It's not even like a real standalone film. Like sometimes there's sequels where it's a sequel, but it mostly does stand on its own. This one, no. All they're doing throughout the entire movie is referencing Joker 1, which is fine. It could work. But because it does that, it is so reliant on the first film. And the movie, again, the main point I'm trying to make is that they're just trying to undermine the events of the first film. So first, let's dive into Arthur and his character arc and why, again, I think parts of it were competently done, but as an arc that serves a character that went on a previous arc in a prior film, it's so reductive. The term I used in the video I made today was destructive, that it's a destructive film. Oh, we got a mention in the chat. Zach says, "Is it worth seeing at all?" I'd say so. I mean, I'm always, if you're limited in terms of like what movies you could see, I would recommend The Wild Robot. I haven't seen Transformers 1, but I've heard good things. So maybe if you're limited on how many movies you can see, I would take a pass on it. But I always encourage people to see movies, even bad ones, because it's important that you form your own opinion, especially because I love a lot of movies that most people don't like. And if I just listened to other people, then I would have never seen movies that I ended up really liking. So it's important to form your own opinion. But I mean, The Wild Robot, not to go on too much of a tangent, but The Wild Robot was a fantastic film. For me right now, it's probably my favorite film of the year. And I hope I can make a video on that. If I end up doing a video that's like the top 10 movies of the year, it will almost certainly be, well, it will definitely be on that list. But anyway, let's get back to the Joker. So, spoilers, by the way. The video title does say spoilers. I should have like a spoilers tag on the screen. But at this point, if you click on a video that says spoilers and you're like, why are there spoilers here? Then you're a little cuckoo. So for one, Arthur begins this movie at a different place than he ended the previous one, which isn't always a big deal. But considering the films happen relatively close to each other, I think it's been about 2 years since the events of the first movie, it's quite strange. So the film, I believe, is trying to explore these themes of identity through Arthur, where all movie, he's constantly being told, what he is, what he should be, why he did the things that he did. And I think a lot of these scenes really worked. So it's like, I think initially, deep down, he's kind of just not apathetic, He's kind of just over it. Like, he's accepted his situation. He's accepted that he's going to get punished for his crimes, and he doesn't really care about the outcome. It's like when people tell him that he could be facing the death penalty, he doesn't seem to have a vivid reaction to that, and I found that to be interesting. Then he meets Harley, and Harley reignites that Joker spark in him that's been lacking for 2 years at this point. Because Joker doesn't get any affection. He's probably all alone in prison. No one really talks to him besides the guards, and they're all rude to him. So here comes someone who loves the Joker, and Arthur reflects on that, and he's like, okay, someone loves the Joker, so I'm going to be the Joker. And then he proceeds to slowly embrace more of that Joker identity that we saw in the first film. So it's a little weird that he's kind of abandoned that Joker personality he developed in the first film. So it's like the first film ends and he's the Joker. This film begins and he's kind of back to just being Arthur. And then he's slowly building back up to being Joker. And there's lots of scenes where he's kind of battling, am I really Arthur? Am I really the Joker? What is this? And like some of the scenes with his lawyer, like that one scene with the interview, I don't remember the name of the interviewer, but the interview, initially he starts repeating the talking points of, I don't really remember what I was doing. I had flashes, the split personality disorder that is the basis of his case. That's what his lawyer is trying to argue, is that he has a split personality disorder. So he's feeding into that. And then I don't remember specifically what the reporter said, but he starts to be a little rude to Arthur. And then this sparks Arthur to become a bit more genuine and push back. And again, these scenes I feel work because, for one, Joaquin Phoenix is a fantastic actor. And they give us an insight into the character. And this is, again, my whole theme with this video is that I think so much of it was competently made. It's just so peculiar that it was designed to be so reductive. It was designed to undermine the first film. So let's get back to the movie. So Arthur spends more time with Harley, and he keeps on building up that Joker personality. There's points where he starts playing into the crowd. It's like, this is the attention he loves, so he's going to keep on being Joker because that's who people seem to love. And then, easily the best scene in the movie was the scene where Gary Puddles, I love how Arthur's like, is your last name really Puddles? It's because I was thinking that same thing. But Gary Puddles is brought to be a witness. And poor guy, his acting was fantastic. I've never seen the Gary Puddles in anything else, but man, he was perfect. Where he basically is telling Arthur, he's like, we were friends. You were the only one who was nice to me. And to see you become the Joker is so haunting. It ruined his life. That's what Gary says. And then that's the moment where Arthur switches. He's like, okay, I'm not really the Joker. And of course, some events happen in between that witness hearing and the revelation that he's no longer Joker. Especially certain things that happen to him while he's in prison that a lot of people do not like. And then once he reveals himself as the Joker, Harley abandons him. A lot of his supporters seem to abandon him. But then the explosion happens. He's able to escape. But even then, he's like in the car of some of his supporters and he still leaves them. He's like, okay, I really don't want to do this. I'm really not the Joker. I don't care. And then he goes back to Arkham. And because he abandoned his Joker personality, someone, presumably going to be now the real Joker, kills Arthur. And he says he gets what he deserves. So I think there are points where this arc could have been better. Like, I think if maybe this movie began with Arthur like as the Joker and then they wanted to bring him back down to being just Arthur, I think that could work. Instead of ending Joker 1 with Arthur as Joker, beginning Joker 2 with Arthur as Arthur, bringing him back to Joker and then taking him back down again. I think that's a big reason why a lot of people say, what was the point of this film? Because Arthur kind of begins and ends at the same way. It's like he has this arc, but the arc is circular. So it's like he begins one way, he's being slowly transformed, and then he realizes he doesn't want to be that, so he goes back to how he was in the beginning. It's like, is that an arc? Because, again, if you look at Arthur in the beginning and the end, he's the same person. But he does change throughout the story. He just ends up back at the same place. I guess that counts as a character arc, and that could be really interesting. It's just, given the fact that this movie's a sequel, and the first movie ended in such a way where his arc took him in a completely different direction, it's so jarring. And I've been, when I criticize movies or talk about movies and I have anything negative to say, I always try to think of a better alternative. Of course, I'm no writer. There's a reason why I'm just talking to you guys on YouTube instead of making my own movies. But I still like to think of my own solutions. I think if you're going to criticize something, you owe it to whatever you're criticizing to come up with something better. And I'm struggling a little bit. Of course, I could think of something that's just completely unrelated to Folie, Deux and say this is now Joker 2. But I want to think of a way to make this story better. And I just don't know if I can, because it's just the fundamental part of Arthur's character is that it appears Todd Phillips wants to undermine the events of the first film. And I said this in my video today. If you guys watched it, and then you would know. It's like Todd Phillips really wanted Arthur to be this repulsive character, but people ended up really empathizing with him. And he's like, oh shit, I don't want this to happen. So now 5 years later, he is making a film that's completely breaking down everything that Arthur built up in the first movie. And that's so strange. You never want to assume ill intent on a storyteller. It's like even movies that I think are terrible, I don't think these storytellers intended on making a terrible movie. Or if I think like a sequel did something reductive to a previous entry in the franchise, I wouldn't say that the writer or director wanted to undermine the previous movie or show. It just ended up happening. But with this movie, of course, I don't think Todd Phillips wanted to make a bad movie. But the evidence that he wanted to make a film that undermines the first movie, the evidence is overwhelming. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys really think that Todd Phillips has regrets about the first movie and he does not like the way that movie was perceived? And I won't say he wanted to make this movie, but when he was asked to make this movie, he decided, okay, I want to not make that same mistake. I want to make sure that people do not look up to Arthur. And that's why this movie paints him even more in a pathetic light, even though we empathize with him. It's a little strange. Yeah, it feels like they're doing a 3 Joker thing at the end of the movie. I don't see them doing a 3rd Joker movie, if that's what you mean. I can see why he retreated from his Joker persona at the start when that was no longer a respite. The guards would have constantly mocked his Joker persona. If he doesn't have a gun, he can't sustain it. Interesting, but it's an interesting take. But I don't know if it's still kind of reductive just to say, oh, the guards are mean to him, so he's gonna like retreat back to his old ways. I don't really see Arthur from the first movie doing that. Yeah, he should have started as Joker. My solution for Joker 2 is make Harley Quinn the main character. I think that would be an interesting approach to the film, is if you make, since there's only so much you can do with Arthur because Arthur had a completed character arc, maybe have this film be a second, or have this film be from the perspective of someone else, Harley Quinn. And Arthur will still be in the movie, but it's not from his perspective. I think that could be really interesting. And we see someone see the Joker. Yeah. I refuse to go watch it because of the reviews I've heard from people I respect alone. I mean, that's fair. The first one is a masterpiece. This one sounds like a violation. Yeah, I've seen so many good examples where it's like, you watch the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, and it's like, he builds up this character, right? This identity of Spider-Man. And it's like, what if Spider-Man 2, he decided he hated all of that. He doesn't want to fight crime. He believes violence is wrong. So then he completely throws away the Spider-Man outfit for good, and he sees this as a good thing, and then he gets killed at the end. It's like, it's just depressing. I always describe the first movie as depressing, but after seeing this movie, no, this movie's depressing. Because this movie, I feel like the Joker, the franchise, 2 movies, the Joker series should have really been like a tragic tale that by the end of it, we don't empathize. We would always empathize with Arthur, but we don't sympathize with him at all. It's like he's clearly a really bad person. And the larger theme of the story here is that be careful, like society can turn you into this person. And the first movie did that. And I think there could have been ways you could have continued that further. But now in this movie, it's like, no, we don't want that. We want Arthur to be someone who doesn't like this Joker identity. He doesn't really believe what he stood for at the end of the first movie. And he's kind of like a better person now. And then he gets killed. So it's like, okay, you tried to turn him into a better person. Like, do we like him? Do we like him more now? Am I allowed to sympathize with him? And then you kill him off for doing the right thing. It's just, I get that part is tragic, but it's not tragic in a powerful way. It's tragic in a disappointing way, if that makes sense. Cosmo Fate says, the first one is really good, and I think it was intended to only be one. And then he also says, Harley Quinn is so much potential, and they wasted her. Yeah, usually when a film takes so long to develop a sequel, the original was kind of based to be a standalone movie. I'm trying to think of like movies that took a long time to develop a sequel. And it's like, yeah, that sequel could happen, but the original film does stand on its own. Like there was Alien with Sigourney Weaver that came out in 1977, and then Aliens came out in 1986, so that's 9 years. But Alien is still a standalone film. There's the first Avatar movie that came out in 2009, and then The Way of Water came out in 2022, so that's 13 years. Again, a sequel happened, but the first movie does stand on its own. Like the longest gap between sequels is like maybe like The Dark Knight to Dark Knight Rises, that's 4 years. While The Dark Knight, again, it's a standalone movie, but it kind of felt like there could be a conclusion. Usually it's 3 years, like, at the most, where it's like you watch The Phantom Menace or the original, or not even the original Star Wars, just The Phantom Menace. It's like, okay, yeah, this film needs a sequel, and it comes out 3 years later. Andreas Matheson, I apologize if I said that wrong, says, The Joker 2 should be 10 years later with a young Bruce Wayne looking to avenge his parents by killing him. Not as Batman, mind you, as Bruce Wayne. Then, near the climax of the film, Bruce learns about and actually sympathizes with Arthur's story, but that triggers Arthur emotionally and causes death to someone near Bruce. A girlfriend, maybe? This causes him to become Batman by the very end of the film. Not an awful idea. It would depend on how it's executed, but I kind of like there not being a Batman. Or if there was a Batman. What if there was a Batman and it's much later in the future, but we really don't get any character development from Bruce? Or it's like Arthur escapes, he's out there, and he keeps on hearing about this Batman. And maybe there's a good story you could tell there. Also, the whole thing with Arthur being in prison, it limits so much of what you can do. It's like the only thing you really could do is get him out of prison, because it's like he can't be Joker in jail unless he wants to become like the ringleader of Arkham, which, I don't know, maybe there's a good story there, but it really limits what you can do when the character is in prison. There's a reason in The Dark Knight why the Joker had to escape for the rest of the movie, because they needed something to happen. Cosmo Fate says, maybe that sounds interesting. Harley Quinn in most media is a twisted and idealized version of Joker and believes his lies. I did not mind at all that this movie kind of twisted the Harley and Joker relationship. From what I've always seen is that like Joker is the one who's manipulating Harley. In this film, Harley manipulates the Joker. I didn't mind that at all. Let's actually transition into Harley, because I didn't mind that flip of their roles, but they didn't. It's like Harley's in the film a lot, but I don't love what they did with her. So it's like her role in this film is to convince Arthur to be the Joker again, and then for him to realize he doesn't really want to be that. And then at the end of the film, she's like, "Oh, I don't really care about you. I just care about the Joker." And that kind of affirms Arthur's choice to abandon the Joker persona at the end of the trial. Unless I'm missing anything. That seems to be her narrative purpose, because she doesn't have an arc. And they're really vague with her in a lot of ways. And I saw this really interesting point where it's like, one of the scenes where Arthur's on trial, we see Harley on the streets, and she's watching Arthur through the TVs from this TV store. And she like breaks the windows and takes the TV and walks away. It's like it's a cool moment. But then we learn that Harley's secretly from a rich family. So it's like, okay, why did you steal a TV? It's like, is that all symbolic? Maybe. But I mean, overall, Harley, I don't want to say she didn't add much to the film, because she's essential in Arthur's character arc. But it seems like, I don't say they did kind of waste her. It's like she just was there to convince Arthur to be Joker, and then he realizes he doesn't want to be the Joker, and then she's like, okay, I'm out. ProMax69 said, "I'd love to see an extended cut, since there was scenes in the trailer that didn't make it in the movie." Yes, but at this point, I'm not sure like what more scenes there could be. I mean, the theme, the main character arc is there. It's like you don't need more scenes to flesh out Arthur or Harley. Like, they serve their roles. Sure, seeing more could be nice, but again, that's why I say this movie was competently made, but it was intentionally trying to destroy the events of the first movie. So it's so peculiar. Synth Pop says, "Incredibly perplexing film." Yeah, that's why I totally agree, because it seems like it intentionally wants to be reductive. Sal Valente says, "Do you think these characters being based off the Batman comics actually hurts these movies? Would this film actually be received better if they weren't connected to the DC characters?" Oh, absolutely. 100%. A big part of it, this wasn't really it for me, but a big part of it is that you have this character in Joker, and you kind of set him up that he's going to become the Joker, hence the title of this film. And then you completely rip that away and say, no, this is not the Joker. He's actually going to get killed by the real Joker at the end of the movie. So yeah, this film would be a lot better received if it wasn't a DC movie, completely. There's still other issues with this film, but a big part of it is that this is the Joker character. But I also believe that when you're telling a story within an IP, you owe it to that story. I don't want to say to properly manage your audience's expectations, but that you don't piss them off, that you don't completely ignore the source material. You can have completely original takes. Hell, the first Joker movie was a pretty much completely original take. But it's like, okay, you're setting up this character to become the Joker, hence the title of the movie, Joker, and now it's just a misdirection where it's like, okay, no, he's not going to be the Joker, really. It's like the writers are saying, no, you're silly for ever wanting this character to become the Joker. You're silly for thinking that he ever would become the Joker. And I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. Andreas says again, "I think a satisfying emotional arc for Arthur in the second film would have been for someone to actually pity him and forgive him, only to be triggered by it. But then again, as you said, his arc was mostly complete after the first film. It's the only emotional place I could have seen them gone." Yeah, so this is the thing I'm trying to think of. It's like, what is a better direction to take Arthur? I think, and this is one thing I argued, it's like, sure, you could have Arthur escape from prison. You could have him become more of a crime leader, where he does become more like the Joker we know. But that also, in a way, kind of does undermine the first film, because the first film isn't really about Joker. It's a film about society and how it treats marginalized people. That's why I think the movie is better off just being open-ended. Yeah, I struggle to think of a meaningful sequel. It's like, could a good sequel have been made? Yes, it's not impossible. It happens. But what else could you do with this character other than explore a completely different theme, which I don't think is very fair. Gavin says, what are your thoughts on the Birdman and his Exposing the Grift series? I don't know who that is. Cosmo Fate says, I think other villains should get a spotlight for movies. Joker is good, but a bit overused. There are a lot of Batman villains which could be used for standalone movies. A better direction could go for fantasy and animation. Yeah, I mean, they're doing a Penguin show right now, so that's exploring another villain. Harley Quinn is essentially a Batman villain, and they basically gave her own movie in Birds of Prey. I know there's you could do the Riddler, but we just saw the Riddler in The Batman. Also, Joker is just the most iconic villain, so it's understandable why they did that. It would be interesting to see other Elseworlds characters, but they're just not as iconic as the Joker, so it would be really hard to market that. But again, it could be interesting. And especially now after the release of this Joker movie that most people don't like, I feel like it would be harder to sell fans on this type of movie again. Because it's okay, what if you're just going to destroy the character again? Andrea says, it's a tough pitch, besides financial reasons, to actually make Joker 2. Too bad it was the financial aspect that clearly sold this one. I don't know if I agree, because a lot of people say the reason this film exists is because Warner Brothers just wanted to capitalize on a sequel to the highest rated or the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. And that's probably true. But Todd Phillips clearly did try with this movie. It's not soulless. It's just harmful. And most of the time these soulless sequels are an issue. And this film is not soulless, so it's what are the financial reasons that hindered this film? It's also a bit peculiar that this movie had such a big budget when most of it was just in a jail cell or in a courtroom. I don't know how this movie has a bigger, almost twice the budget of the first film. That's really strange to me. Ryan T says, the best part by a long way, in my opinion, was the court scene with Mr. Puddles when he was saying how Arthur never made fun of him, and that was just really hit hard for me. I wish they fleshed that out. Yeah, I agree. That's the best scene in the film, easily. But again, it's the best scene in the film, and the scene serves to undermine Arthur's character because it makes him feel bad. I think in isolation, that scene could work. Maybe it would work better if Arthur sees that and he's still hard set in his Joker way, almost as if he's completely lost. Maybe Joker 2 could have been where there's still some light left in Arthur, and then by the end of it, it's just completely gone. And maybe it could be a reflection on the justice system, and that maybe Joker got screwed in some ways, or Arthur got screwed. But again, Arthur did kill 5 people. But it's is there an argument for self-defense? I do not know this, but if you're getting jumped in a train by 3 people kicking you and whatever, do you have the right to self-defense? But it's could that self-defense be too extreme? Just if someone is kicking you, can you shoot them in the head? I don't know the legal ramifications of that, but does Arthur have a case? But granted, even if the 3 people that he killed in the subway were forgiven because of self-defense, he still did kill Robert De Niro's character in Cold Blood. So, yeah. Damn Fine Cup of Coffee says, I thought the story was solid, but the musical aspect was so poorly done, it made a grueling and often eye-rolling inducing experience, and I usually love musicals. Oh yeah, I haven't spoken about the musicals at all. Thank you for bringing that up. I cannot remember where I heard this, but it was a great description of musicals. They said musicals should be like an action scene where, with an action scene, it's the main purpose of an action scene is action. You want to show action that engages the audience and is fun to watch, is well choreographed, all that. But the best action scenes still propel the characters. They'll make decisions throughout that action scene that allows you to learn more about them. And not only does it propel the plot forward, but it propels the characters forward. With this film, I genuinely believe you can cut out all the musicals and you're just not missing anything. And maybe this is just me because I don't have the best hearing, but like I couldn't understand a single one of these songs. Like, I don't know what the point of any of them was, other than that Arthur kind of likes music. So I would have to like read the lyrics of all the songs and see what they're actually trying to say. But most of the time, it's Arthur giving into his delusion. But there's never a song where he's like, oh, I realize I don't like this. He's just like, I'm not the Joker anymore, and I don't remember if there's any other songs after that. I think there's one where he has one of Harley killing him, like as he's dying. But again, what was the point of that? He's like dying at that point. Is he reflecting on his life? I don't really buy that. Meme then says, I haven't seen it yet. If I go in with low expectations, do you think I will enjoy it? Or should I just avoid it altogether? I think there's a difference between low expectations and expectations that this film wants to undermine the events of the first movie. It's like, yeah, you can see a sequel that's just bad, you can laugh at it. But again, this film is competently made. There's great acting, there's great directing. The cinematography was great. All that. But it's just like the film so expertly wanted to undo the first film. So it's like if you don't care at all about the first movie, then this film might be more for you. Honestly. It's like if you really thought that the first Joker movie was a damage to society, kind of like what Todd Phillips might have thought, then you might actually like this film. Sure, there's other issues with character arcs and whatever, and the music not being super relevant. But I really think the only way you can really enjoy this film is if, one, you don't have any attachment to DC whatsoever, and if you don't really like Joker's arc in the first movie. So strange. Cosmo Fate says, yeah, a more destructive path would be interesting for Joker too. The perfect example I think of, and it's such a generic answer, but it's kind of like with Walter White. He slowly becomes more and more dangerous, more and more vile as the series progresses. They should have done something like that with Arthur, where I really think it should be tragic, where you just keep on doubling down. Where it's like, oh, this guy's life really is a tragedy. While the way Joker 2 ends, it's kind of just sad. It's not even a tragedy. It's just like sad. That Arthur tried to do the right thing, and he just dies. Andrea says, my point was that the financial reward was more appealing to Warner Brothers than the story. I think a lot of questions should have been asked and answered before they decided on a story that undoes most of what came before. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Now that I think about it, and based off of some of the comments I've seen here, I really do think the best way to do a Joker 2 film is with a different protagonist. And that Arthur is a supporting character where he doesn't change. Because he's been on his arc now. So now we can see... what could have been interesting? And I don't know if Todd Phillips is capable of directing this. But like the first film really showed the insights of how a marginalized man could be affected by all this and cause him to become destructive. It's like, what if they wanted to explore that with Harley, a woman's perspective? Like, how would that turn out? Like, how is there a different way a woman could be destructive than a man? I think that could be interesting. And have Harley be inspired by Joker, and then she goes down her own destructive path where it's a tragedy as well. But then that also kind of completely has no relation to Harley's origin because she's a psychologist, and they kind of tease that here, but it's not a big part of her character. So that could be an interesting direction to take the film. Where it's like, film one, you have this man, Arthur, marginalized, beaten down by society, and this is how he kind of reacts in such a violent way. And we don't condone it, but we understand it. And now Joker 2 could be Maybe Harley sees how Arthur is treated in jail, and she acts out as well. That could be interesting. Campbell says, I like the direction of Arthur failing to live up to what Harley, the crowd, and the audience want him to be as the Joker. He's just a weak man in the end as the story ends. A meta element. Yeah, I get that's the point of the film. I don't think it's just... Again, I just think it's a little reductive to the events of the original film, that what we thought he was, he ended up not being. And I get that what he became was not good at the end of the first Joker movie, but we understand it. In this movie, he just, he goes back the way he was, and then he dies. It's just not satisfying. I think you can have a well-developed character arc, which this movie, I think, it has a well-developed bad character arc. Does that make sense? Because a poorly developed character is like one that's just you don't understand, you don't relate to, can't empathize with. But you can with Arthur in this film, but it's just so reductive. So again, so strange. I agree. Or Andreas says, I agree. A different protagonist would have been a good approach. I still a young Bruce on a revenge spree, not as Batman. It could be interesting, but I understand the overuse of his character as well. Yeah, that could be interesting. Jonathan says, what's cool about having 30 viewers live is I can leave anything slur in the chat, and I know you'll see it. Just kidding, like your content. Thank you. Hopefully more people start tuning in. I do want to keep doing these streams. I've said that in the past where I want to stream and end up not doing it, but now I will be streaming more often because it's fun, and I like engaging with you guys, hoping to build back that Claude Squad community. Cosmo says maybe the idea could have been moved to Harley Quinn. Yeah, that's definitely possible. I'm trying to think if there's anything else really potent about this film I want to discuss. I mean, we've discussed Arthur's character arc, how it's reductive. Maybe you could have done this same arc, but have it be from Harley's perspective, where Joker isn't everything she thought he was, and this causes her to lash out. Maybe that could be interesting. But it still does undermine Arthur's story in the first movie, but at least it's from another perspective. I really think, like, there's so much you could have done with Harley other than have her manipulate Arthur and then disregard him at the end of the movie. The multiverse is broken says, hey, another Goldman live stream. Haven't seen Joker 2, but plan to at some point. I think most films are worth watching. So I would say, yeah, go see it. But go see The Wild Robot first. That movie is actually really good. So go see that movie, and then if you have extra time, go see Joker 2. Damn Fine Cup of Coffee says, maybe Harley could have been the shrink trying to find the old Arthur, forming a connection in order to rehabilitate him, only to ironically unleash the Joker forever when she rejects the real Arthur. That could be interesting. I think that's the best way. I think the only way to continue this story. It was such a big theme of the first movie about how society has failed the marginalized person. I think that could be an interesting way to take the second film, where now it's like the justice system is failing the marginalized person. And that's a big issue in modern politics these days. So there's definitely something interesting to explore there. Like maybe you have the film, right, where Arthur begins as Joker, but he's slowly becoming Arthur again. It's like there's hope. Like we can still have that scene with Gary Puddles, and then that really brings Arthur back down to that Arthur level. But then, I'm not an expert on the issues with the justice system, but you can tie that into something that's going to drive Arthur back to being Joker. So it's like the first movie is about really society failing marginalized people, and then the second movie is really about the justice system failing marginalized people. Maybe that's a good way to continue on the story. The Multiverse is Broken says, just watched Joker 1 and I love it from a filmmaking perspective, but I'm not sure I'd rewatch it. That's how I've always felt about the first movie. I've seen it twice. I saw it in theaters, and I saw it one other time, and I'm like, this movie's great, but I don't really want to rewatch it again. Now, after seeing Joker 2, I rewatched some of the best scenes from Joker 1, and I want to sit down and rewatch the whole movie. So I totally get where you're coming from. The Zot Man says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the film delves into the dark side of sensationalism and how people will cling to these heroes until they do the right thing that goes against their views. I really like that idea, the Zot Man. I think the story would have been more powerful if you told that story from the perspective of one of those fans. This way, maybe, say Harley is the fan. We see how her fanaticism with this character, the Joker, is really affecting her and really like driving her insane. And then once he becomes Arthur again, she's so lost. And then she becomes destructive after that. I think that's a more interesting way to kind of tell the same story, at least in terms of Arthur's perspective. Because I do agree with you. I love that theme of the dark side of sensationalism. I think it would have been better if you explored it from someone else, from the people who are actually affected from this. Because Arthur, I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting to show it from his perspective, but again, I think it's more interesting to show it from the other people's perspective. But that's just my take. Andrea says, Hobbit and House of the Dragon videos were 10 out of 10 for me. Keep the content coming, and soon you'll be up there with the top YouTubers. Greetings from Norway. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I didn't make this like a public announcement or anything, but YouTube is not my full-time job. So you're going to get a lot more content out of me. Cosmo Fate says, maybe she realizes she lives in a fantasy because she can't find love. Yeah. Again, this is something that I can't think of because I'm not a woman. I really think an interesting way to take this film would have been to show a similar story to Arthur's, but from a woman's perspective. What kind of struggles would she face that's different from Arthur? I think that could have been very interesting. ERR says, off topic, but Goldman, you're so handsome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Stay on topic. Cosmo Fate says, maybe the idea of not being loved or not getting respected for her work. If she's actually the doctor, that could be interesting. Again, I think I really like this idea, or this back and forth we're having, of just coming up with a more productive sequel as opposed to a reductive one, which is what we got. But then Todd Phillips really can't direct this film. Yeah. I like that idea. I would love to do a Joker rewrite, but my rewrite videos don't really do that well, so we'll see. Maybe I'll do a stream where it's like I sit down and we rewrite Joker 2 together. That could be interesting. But again, it's like my perfect Joker 2 now, I think, is like from Harley's perspective. But I kind of want a woman to write that, you know. But these are all really interesting ideas. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my spoiler discussion on Joker 2. A competently made reductive film. Very strange. I'm struggling to think of another film like that. But even if like I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone who does think a storyteller was trying to undermine the previous work. I know, going back to Star Wars, that's my bread and butter. It's like there are definitely people out there who think Rian Johnson's intention was to undermine the original Star Wars. So if you think that about The Last Jedi, but you still probably don't think it's a competent film. While I think Joker 2 is a competent film that just really wanted to undermine the first movie. So it's not really the same. Damn Fine Cup of Coffee says, this movie's Murray moment could have been on the stairs with Arthur, heartbroken at Lee. By the way, I hated that they called her Lee. Beating her and more. Ironically, unleashing Joker, making her want to stay, and they're stuck with each other. Cosmos says there are different issues that women deal with. Yeah, and I think that could have been a really interesting direction to take this film. Andrea says, cool, good luck on the YouTube career. Yeah, thank you. Hope it all goes well. I'm trying to do more, like, occasionally some shorter videos, like I did a Joker 2 video today. So if the new movie comes out, like, I know Smile 2 comes out soon. I love the first one. So depending on what happens in that movie, maybe I could do a shorter video essay on Joker 2 or Smile 2. And then there's Venom 3. But, like, I've hated the Venom movies, so I'm not sure what I could talk about there. But you never know. Deux says Reagan Fox was the first in talks to play Harley Quinn, who looks exactly like her from the comics. What are your thoughts? You can do a quick Google image. I have no clue who Reagan. Is this gonna be like some secret? Is this like a bait where I'm gonna look it up and it's gonna be like some porn actress? Reagan Fox. I don't see anything. I didn't see anything, so. Andrea says, I think if you keep analyzing the old gems like The Hobbit, Game of Thrones, etc., you'll just keep adding to your user base before you can attack the more original work, but that's just me. I have some ideas. So, brief insight if you're interested in what videos I'm doing next. So I'll be doing you can see the light on me now because I just pulled up my Google Docs. I'll be doing a Rings of Power Season 2 review that's coming out this week. I want to do by the way, this schedule is always subject to change. That's why I don't really announce it. The week after that, I want to do a retrospective on the first season of Arcane because Season 2 comes out in November. I want to do The Marvels 1 year later. I also want to do a Penguin review when that finishes. I'm going to try and do a complete Clone Wars retrospective by the end of the year. Hopefully sometime in November. But yeah, a retrospective on the entire series. I did one for Rebels, so I want to do one on the Clone Wars now. I want to do a Interstellar 10 years later video. And that's kind of all I have planned out for the next 2 months. I have some other ideas, but they are very subject to change. So yeah, those are my big main video ideas that I have coming. By the way, I haven't seen most of Season 2 of Rings of Power, but I'm going to watch that tonight. The Penguin is so good. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, so no spoilers. Rings of Power, I've seen the first 3 episodes. I need to watch the last 5. And I'm going to do that all tonight. After I make dinner, because I'm hungry. Oh god, yes, inject Clone Wars Retro in my veins. Yeah, so that'll be fun. I'll give myself 2 weeks to do that. And go through all the seasons. And all the best arcs and why I think they were good or not. Says I can't finish Rings of Power Season 2. Rings of Power is one of those shows that, at least for the first season, I didn't think was good, but I can still watch it just because I'm not a Tolkien nerd. Like, I have no emotional attachment to these characters. So it's like, people see something and like, oh, this completely undermines Tolkien. I'm like, good thing I don't know Tolkien, so it doesn't really upset me. Not that I'm excusing it, I'm just saying it doesn't affect me. But I understand where others are coming from. Handsome indeed. Try and growing out your hair longer, maybe less scruff, or shortcut with more beard. No, I'm gonna be shaving, but I'm also gonna. My hair doesn't look nice when it gets long. It gets really messy, so I'll ideally just short hair and no beard. Gabriel says, "Have you talked about that scene in Joker 2? The ending where he gets stabbed?" Yes. This is a spoiler discussion, so I can openly say that. Maybe the idea of feeling powerless should be explored. I agree with that, Cosmo, because I think that's something that, I can't speak for them, I think a lot of women could relate to. If you're going to try and have it from Harley's perspective, maybe she feels powerless in some way, and that could be really interesting. I'm not a Tolkien nerd either, but that show loses me sometimes. Yeah, I mean, at least the show, from my opinion, looks really good. So when a show looks great, I can, like, okay, the story sucks, but I like looking at pretty things, so we'll do that. And hey, Morford Clock is gorgeous. Which reminds me, I'd love for you to make a video where you analyze how Star Wars went wrong after the Disney purchase. I mean, I'm more positive on Disney's Star Wars than most. So I think people over-exaggerate that. But that is not the place for this video. No, he means the scenes in the showers. Oh, where he was... Am I allowed to say that word on YouTube without getting demonetized? The word that rhymes with grape? I don't know. But you all know what we're talking about. You have the shower scene. Again, it's like the film just wants you to completely beat down the guy. And it just didn't seem necessary. It's like he dies anyway. It's so sad. It's like the film wants us to like him a little bit more, and then we see him get whatever. And just depressing. Just noticed Claude in your name. Oh, in my logo? Yeah, in my logo you can see Claude. Speaking of which, Claude's not out. I put Claude in my closet right there. I need to take him out next time. Yeah, I heard Wild Robot is amazing. Really want to check it out. I'm just really busy with starting college. Yeah, Wild Robot. It's a short film, but it's so good. I cried like... It's very rare for me to like actually cry, but like a little bit tears from the Wild Robot happened like twice. Oh, a super chat from the Storytellers Guild. $20, thank you. Keep up the awesome, cool content, man. Would love to collaborate sometime. Thank you so much. I apologize. I don't know who you are. But again, seriously, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. It says, let's celebrate, in the chat, it says, let's celebrate their first super on a live stream. I've gotten super chats before. What's YouTube talking about? But anyways, thank you so much to the Storytellers Guild. Cosmo Fate says, maybe it could be more, it could be from a child that sees Joker and conflicted between two ideas. The Joker being this good guy and his father says he is good, or the mother sees him as a complete monster. These are all interesting ideas. Because they don't, I think the moral of the story here, at least from this discussion we're having, is that the best way to take a Joker 2 is not to have it from Arthur's perspective. Because since his arc was done, there's only so many things you could do with him as the main character. So now having him being a supporting character is a better direction to go. Claude is a Sith Lord. You gotta take Claude out of the closet. You know what's one thing I noticed? I have this interesting filter on right now where it makes it look a little more professional. So look at this. So I have this studio light thing. So if I go like this, see how the lighting here is like not as interesting? But if I click this, now it looks so much better. When I do that, if you notice back here, like look like right here. Like, let's say you see a little bit like of light pop out. So yeah, but like when I have Claude in the background, that becomes a much bigger issue. But I need to add him back. Storyteller Guild has nice thumbnails. I love nice thumbnails, so... The Last Resident, a $2 super chat. I recognize The Last of Us profile pic, by the way. Absolutely love Joker 2, second best movie of 2024. That's awesome. I'm curious, The Last Resident, what did you love about the film? Because, again, I no judgments, but I don't like the film, so I'm curious what you have to say. But hey, that's awesome. I'm glad you love the movie. By the way, I'm going to wrap up this stream at the end of the hour. So if you have any burning last questions you want to ask, get them in within the next 6 minutes or so. But thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate... These streams are always better when there's people here to watch. Not because if there's no one here, not only do I look silly, but I like hearing other people's ideas. I think it's so important when talking about storytelling to balance ideas. Because it doesn't matter how much you study something, the way your brain is wired is just not going to pick up something that someone else can. It's like that great quote from Iroh from Avatar, where he's like, if you take your knowledge from one source, you become rigid and stale. You need a variety of sources to become whole. I know I completely butchered that quote, but I fundamentally believe that. Did you play Star Wars Outlaws? No. ERR, what's the next video topic? Rings of Power Season 2. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say like why it sucks or why it's great or whatever. I don't know why, but for some reason, as flawed as Joker 2 was, the moment when Harley sang Close to You to Arthur and it cuts to him slowly dancing in his cage, again, I don't know why, I just did something. Yeah, again, oh, you retracted that message. Again, that's why this movie is competently made. There's some really good scenes here. And even though the musicals were kind of useless, they were filmed really well. It's just like the movies, not great. I'm surprised but not surprised about Joker 2's reception. It looked interesting, but also the first one felt very conclusive. Yeah, that's where I tend to agree the most. Joker 1 was a very conclusive film. And maybe Joker 2 should have been from before Joker 1. No, I don't see the benefit of a prequel. It's like a prequel to who would you show? It's like this is the culmination of all of the frustration from the marginalized in that movie. So it's like, what could you do in a prequel? Show more of Arthur? No. He begins the first movie as a nobody, so you can't really have Arthur in there. Yeah, I don't know if a prequel would work. Or, Todd Phillips could have just done a different movie. Not a Joker 2. I will say, even though this movie was bad and so reductive, I am more interested in seeing... I'm interested in seeing more of Todd Phillips' career. Because he clearly has a ballsy mind. And those are the kinds of movies that I respect. The ones that really take swings. And Joker 2 was a big swing. It just didn't work out. He missed. A Child Arthur I don't think would work. Have you seen The Penguin? Not yet. But I will be making a video on it, so I'm going to binge it. I'm thinking about doing like weekly... Maybe I'll do a mid-season Penguin discussion this weekend. I have to see the first... I think 3 episodes are out right now. I think there's going to be 8. So I need to watch them. But right now I need to focus my energy on Rings of Power. Season 2. Which ended last week. And I'm excited to watch it. So yeah, Joker 2. Final rating I would give it. That's a good question that I asked myself. I don't think I can go below a 4 just because of how well made so many aspects of this film were. But again, it was just so reductive. So I'd give Joker 2 a 4 out of 10. A film that is heavily flawed with some moments to shine. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. That is true. Very, very true. I think the next big movie, I don't think there's any big movies coming out this weekend. But then 2 weekends, there's Smile 2. I don't know if that's considered a big movie, but I loved the first one, so it's a movie I will see. And I need to see Transformers 1. I haven't seen that yet. So I need to go see that. There's a lot of other movies this year I haven't seen. Like, I haven't seen Inside Out 2. Isn't that bad? So, absolutely some things I need to catch up on. But for now, Rings of Power will hold my attention once I click end stream. All right, last minute. Any final questions? I'm hungry, by the way. I am hungry. Oh, Alien, Romulus, and Prometheus. I loved Romulus, by the way. I kind of missed the window to make a video on Romulus. Maybe if I do a end of year, like best movies of whatever, I could might want to start deleting my internet history. Dude, I'm my own man. It's like, who's gonna look at my internet history? Y'all are silly. Alien Romulus was great. I love that movie. Love, love, love. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up the stream. I'm going to try and do streams. I'm going to try and start streaming every Sunday now. Like at noon Eastern time. Before football. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that. Those would kind of just be generic Q&As where we can talk about whatever. Well, this is more of a Joker 2 discussion, clearly. Anyway, thank you everybody so much for watching this stream. I appreciate you tuning in. And don't forget to join the Cloud Squad. Click the like button, by the way. And I will see you guys next time. Good night or